Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul. I'm your host this evening. Yes, we've missed last week. I'm sorry, it's not every week. We do try to be every week, but a bit on and off. Real life gets in the way sometimes, unfortunately. But we're back to the end to round up the end of the regular season, just before we head into a finals footy. And I say we because yes, I've got Mr. Harris back. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, thank you, Paul. Always a privilege and a pleasure to be on your show.
Yes, and after sort of midway through the season, you'd be thinking, I really don't want to be around at this sort of time of year because of how my team are doing. Looking at all those jerseys behind you, they somehow managed to pull it out of the bag in the end, didn't they?
Yep, must admit they weren't looking that great after the first few rounds, but I think we always felt that the draw kind of favoured them towards the end of the season, and once again, the only team they really had to worry about was Moana, but we always thought that was a bridge a little bit too far for the team that's from just across the bridge, about probably about 10 k's north of here.
I'll be honest, I thought they were dead and buried, but there you go. That's just me. So yes, but there we go. Clearly, what do I know? Not very much. Good evening, Socks on Right, who's joined us on the old YouTube. Look, you can join us on YouTube or Facebook Live, and join in with the chat, or you can listen to the podcast as a replay, and obviously the videos as replays as well on that one. But before we dive into all of this kind of stuff, 2028, Stephen, apparently that is when we're going to have the Rugby World Club Championship. Every 4 years, apparently, which all seems a bit of a mess, really. Are you hyped for this year after the Rugby World Cup?
No, not really, and nor is former New Zealand Rugby Union back then CEO David Moffat, because I heard an interview with David, and he wasn't impressed with it either. He thinks the game's got far too many problems to sort out without worrying about a club championship. He just thinks it's maybe another revenue collecting exercise. That's why the players are not going to complain about it, because there's an opportunity for them to obviously earn more income. But honestly, where do they slot this in?
Well, yes, that's my that's my one as well. Either it's going to be at the end of the the only place I can actually see it working fitting in is if you get rid of the mid-year test windows, the basically July tests. Then it's at the end of the Super Rugby season, and it's at the end of the other season, the Northern Hemisphere European season as well. Apparently, it's going to be 8 teams from the European Champions Cup and 8 teams from Super Rugby and Japan. So I have to see how that balance all looks. Look, without a global season, I really don't see how it works. And with a crowded season already, with players already playing too much rugby, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere for their welfare, I don't see how it works. Now, from a financial point of view, look, with various unions in Europe pulling the plug on their sevens programs because they can't afford it. In Wales, where they've are in all sorts of a mess with where they've gone and given notice on 2 of their 4 teams that they won't necessarily renew them in 2 years' time because again they can't afford it. I can see, yes, there are financial things to sort out. So from that point of view, yes, is it a money grab? Probably, because all the unions need money. Is this the way to do it? Personally, it's very much a short-term money grab rather than a long-term fix. If they're doing it purely for cash, I just don't see how it fits in really. Personally, we already have these competitions between different countries. It's called international rugby. The whole point of the club rugby is that it's domestic. That's the whole point. So, I don't think it's a good fit. But hey, people have been trying to get this off the ground for the past 20 years now, or at least a decade, seriously. So it's unsurprising that we'll see.
Paul, I've got to add that even the biggest game in the world, football, doesn't take the World Club Championship seriously whenever we've seen that championship roll out. You don't see the big clubs getting involved in that particular competition either, and you've got to say it's very much watered down, and they know what their big event is: Football World Cup, European Cup, or basically what is it, the South American
Champions League, yeah.
The Copa, what is it? Copa.
Cup of America, and you got the other international things, but and then and then where's the money? The money's in the Premiership, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A. That's where your money is. It's not and so there isn't a. I'm trying to think. I can't think of a sport off the top of my head that has a decent World Club Championship. Really. So there you go. Maybe rugby will be the first, but I doubt it. Oh dear. So yes, looking at we've got Sean Stevenson heading off to Japan, which I don't think is any real surprise after his short-term trip at the beginning of this season. He's managed to cut his contract short and go. The reason being just the feedback and just not knowing where I sat in the pecking order. He said basically disappointing communication from All Blacks coach Scott Robertson and his assistants. So for someone who people think should be in and around the All Blacks, to not have that communication is a poor sign, really. We're not quite there to be talking about international rugby. As Stephen Harris has his normal technical issues. So it's look, we'll get on to talking about the All Blacks in a couple of weeks' time, no doubt, because the squad is named on I think it's the 23rd of June. On the 23rd of June. I'm just trying to figure out kind of where that is. That is in 1, 2, 3. Oh, so that's the three. Basically, the Monday after the Super Rugby final is when they'll be announcing it. So obviously that'll be a show where we'll talk about that the All Blacks squad that he does announce at that point. As Dr. Wright says, at least tell him that he's crap, or that he's not. Basically, he's not what they're looking for. And I think he is what they're looking for, to be honest, because basically DMAC or Bowden Barrett, they want a ball play. They want a second playmaker fullback, and I don't really think that's what that's what Sean Stevenson is really. So I'm not surprised that he's not part of their plans, but at least tell him that that's the case. Lots of shuffling around on your end, by the way. I don't know what's happening. What Mike is catching on.
No, I've no idea, but I have been tuning in. It'd be interesting to see if what the status of Hosking Satutu, if he's named in this All Black side, and it'll be interesting to see what he actually decides to do, whether he heads offshore. I know the Blues have already got 5 players that are moving on, but there could be upwards, from what I believe, of 10 players moving on from this year's particular team pool. You know, when you think about the likes of Cameron Suafua, who's once again in a health battle of his own. You've got the likes of Ofa Tuangafasi, who I believe still has a neck issue, so which is very similar to the issue that Stephen Kitsoff had. And of course, you've also got the likes of Finlay Christie, Hoskins Satutu. Whether those guys could be selected. There's also a bit of word around that maybe Sam Knock might be on the move as well, Paul. So it's going to be an interesting time for the Blues, and I know the likes of the Highlanders have struggled this year with a young team, but at least they've got all those players signed up for next year. So the NPC becomes doubly important for the Blues franchise teams.
Yeah, I'm just looking through, and I'll be honest, I'll be surprised if there are that many. Well, clearly you're in the know better than I am, but I was very quickly looking through the list of players. You've got to say Patrick Velotti, for example, he's going to be sticking on, trying to make the Rugby World Cup, hasn't he? I think Jordan Lay, wasn't he moving on? I think from memory, but Ricky Riccitelli and Kirk Eklund, those two, I can't see either of those heading over. I think they're both trying to make it, but maybe not. Maybe one of those has decided it's time to pull the pin. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, Rico Wani is going next season to Leinster on a sabbatical. So I guess he could be one of those. He'll be one of those 10 that you're kind of talking about. But yeah, it will be interesting to see kind of what the outflow of players is at the end of it. But those are kind of the main kind of news items around that I saw bouncing around the verse. So let's jump into the games this weekend. So first up, we have the Highlanders hosting the Chiefs. Now, we didn't talk last week. Obviously, the Chiefs the Highlanders coming off the back of a loss to the Crusaders, which in a game they probably should have won, losing at just narrowly 15-12. On the flip side, the Chiefs coming off the back of one of the all-time performances, thrashing the Moana Pacifica 85-7 in that game, 31-0 at half-time. It was all over then, but they didn't let up. Coming into this one, the Chiefs were needing a basically they didn't need something from this to secure themselves top place in the table. The Highlanders, well, they were looking at basically the bottom of the table for them. The Chiefs, though, jumped out to a 19-0 lead in just 14 minutes. A real fast start to the game. 2 tries to Topu Vai, the other one to Finau. So the forwards going to work early doors. The Highlanders did manage to peg things back, helped by a O'Neill yellow card. So it's only 14-19 at half time for a game that could have, well, when once you're 19-0 up, it could have gone really bad in that one. Xavier Rowe, though, and Mattielli tries stretch it out to 17-34 just after the hour mark. And Sam Gilbert try brings it up, did pull things back to a 10-point game. But the Chiefs saw it out, and maybe a little bit of gloss on there because Topu Vai's hat-trick try came on after the hooter. So really, this was a 10-point game, 24-41 scoreline that you see at the end there. Really, because let's be honest, those late scores quite often come about because the other team is having to chase the game and throw things round. If for nothing else, to try and get that bonus point at the end there. Not that I'm just trying to think would the I've got the table in front of me, but and yeah, that bonus point would have a losing bonus point would have lifted them above the draw and meant they didn't come last. So clearly, yeah, they were playing right to the end for to try and get everything they could out of this game. But look, the Chiefs backing up that big wing over Moana Pacifica. Not as clinical, obviously, but still looking mighty strong heading toward the finals.
Oh, listen, the Chiefs, the way they hit the ground, it was almost like they hadn't they hadn't left Hamilton. Basically, they just got into their work, and it looked like they were going to put another pile on against the Highlanders as well. Some pretty impressive performances. 19-0 up, but a yellow card to Ruben O'Neill just changed things a little bit. The Highlanders were able to get a little bit of momentum, get themselves back in the game, but you just always felt that the Chiefs were just at an arm's length away from the Highlanders, like little big brother and big brother and little brother having a bit of a scrap out in the backyard, but Big Brother's got the measure. Some outstanding performances, of course, to provide just not just on the scoreboard, but boy, around the paddock, just absolutely outstanding. I thought some of Penny Finau, probably one of his better performances for the Chiefs in Super Rugby, because he hasn't actually been starting all the time, been behind Simon Parker, but boy, it just goes to show when you got a little bit of competition, Paul, it does bring the best out of players. Some good other good solid performances once again from Jacobson. Gee, he's been just consistent throughout this competition. Of course, a bit of a concern losing Quinn Tupaia with what deemed was an accidental head clash at the time, cleared off by the TMO. And I thought for the Highlanders in a losing team, I tell you what, Timosi Tavatava-Nawai, I think once again enhanced his reputation. Once again, I thought it was another solid shift also from Fabian Holland was very good. TK Houghton also playing some really, really good rugby, and I also thought Talia in the midfield was strong, and Lowe on the wing, Jonah Lowe has played some really good rugby since returning from injury. They had a bit of an opportunity round about the 74th minute. They created an opportunity for the replacement halfback, Adam Lennox, but boy, great bit of defending from Cortez Ratama, holding him up over the goal line. If that had been converted, it would have been 34-31, and with a couple of minutes to go, who knows? But in all honesty, that final points difference was, for me, was about right. I mean, it's like the Highlanders, I think, did well to stay in contact, but the Chiefs just too good on the night, and once again they just enhance their credentials as they go into this week's quarterfinal.
Yeah, look, that was Topu Vai's 95 points, made him the top point scorer on fantasy this week. So if you had him in your locks, well done. You had a good week, I think, with that.
I took him out of my team.
You took him out of your team. Well, that's you still had a decent week. We'll come to that.
Yeah.
And Tavatava-Nawai, as you mentioned him as well, 72 points, putting him fifth for the week as well. He has had a cracking time of it there. Not always put it. Look, a lot of his performances have been better performances rather than fantasy points, but this week he got the fantasy points as well with that one. So yeah, a couple of real top performers there on the fantasy side as well. That's that pretty much. I don't actually. Did they get the bonus point? Yeah, they got the bonus point. Yeah, six tries to 3. So they got the bonus point. Discipline, a bit of an issue maybe for the Chiefs, allowing 12 penalties there, plus the yellow cards, and maybe that's something they'll want to look at in there. Knox Federer Wright says, guessing Tavatava-Nawai will be overlooked for the All Blacks. Well, yes, we might have a look. Well, what we will do in the final week, is we'll also bring up our where we see them on in the squads. But yeah, in that midfield, obviously Geordie Barrett is there. Your Quinn Tupaia, depending on his injury status. David Havili also for that 12 jersey. So there's a number of players. Anton Leonard-Brown is out with that broken collarbone, but yeah, Tavatava-Nawai, I think it's got to be in the conversation for that. But and then obviously you got your Rico Ioanes, your Peter Mango-Johnsons Billy Proctor's what I'm thinking of, more for your number 13 jerseys as well. Actually, Peter Mango-Johnson also had a good week, but we'll get on to that one later on. Then clash of the round, really coming into this one was the Brumbies versus the Crusaders. I've already mentioned the Crusaders were coming off the back of that narrow win over the Highlanders, where they had to put in a stupid amount of tackles and a massive work rate. So perhaps some tired bodies at this part of the season. Whereas the Brumbies were coming into this off a bye with the stupid schedule, meaning that they had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. And look, early on, they did get the first try, but a couple of tries from the Crusaders saw them to pull out a 7-15 lead. Lodisia's try and Lodisia's conversion pulled that back to just 1 point. Until Rivers Rehana not only went over but also converted his own try with Severis knocking over a drop goal. That's possibly his first. It's got to be his first movie of his career, you'd think. Just before half time, So it was an 11-point lead at 14-25 at half time. A very good lead when you're talking about second versus third on the table. That was extended by a Rivers Rehana penalty, but then the comeback was on. Van Neck and Muirhead tries both converted, even things up at 28 all, with just before the hour mark. A Lolosio penalty edged the Brumbies into the lead by just 3 points with only 7 minutes to go. But a late George Bell try gave the Crusaders a 2-point lead that they clung onto to the end, seeing them get themselves the win in this one. The Aussies can really whinge about things. I'm sure everybody can really whinge about things. Let's be honest here. So the Crusaders edge out the win to get themselves second seed in the table. They're 4 tries each. Look, overall, the Crusaders on the tackle, 8 clean breaks to only 4 by the Brumbies. They much more carry meters, so we're much able to get that attacking game going, but perhaps didn't finish off as well as they should do. And it also likes the fact that the team isn't interjecting as much for knock-ons, etc. Look, it's always a balancing act, isn't it? I think whichever way you look at it, either you get bad calls and people will complain, or you get it slowed down and people complain. Either way, people are going to complain at the end of the day. But how did you see this one, Stephen?
Yeah, it's a big performance from the Crusaders. I don't know if they were expected to go there and actually top of the Brumbies. Both these teams had a lot to play for. It pretty much finishing in that second spot gives you not just a home quarter, but also a home semi-final as well. Brumbies obviously will still play a quarter-final at home this upcoming weekend. So for the Crusaders, I actually thought with about 10 to go, I really did think they were gone. There were some good overall performances from the Crusaders. Once again, another very good shift from Tamaiti Williams, as opposed to Tamati Williams, as the Australians call him. But once again, another good 70-minute shift. I thought Ethan Blackadder once again was quite industrious and strong. Scott Barrett with a real key tackle right at the end of the game. Just seems to be hitting a little bit of form for the Crusaders, and of course Sevi Reece also just pops up all over the place and came up with a couple of key plays as well. That drop kick, how important did that turn out to be at the end of the day? But for mine, I thought Rivers Rehana played his best game in a Crusaders jersey. I just think maybe not having David Havili in the team he just gives him the run of the cutter. I think at times I've noticed when Havili is playing, he tends to be running the back line from second five. Hi, Simon Hughes. So I was really pleased for Rivers Rehana, and a couple of good. We're starting to see his running game, which is quite impressive. As for the Brumbies, they'll probably be thinking to themselves, they missed an opportunity to win this, because I think from the 50th minute, obviously they scored a couple of tries to Van Neck and then Muirhead, then Lilosea with the go-ahead penalty, and you just thought, you know what, it's momentum near the end, and that's been the second time this season that they basically had run a team down only to basically lose it at the end. I can think back to the Force game earlier in the season where they scored and then the Force came back and scored. So they've basically done it again. Once again, bit of controversy with regards to the knock-on. Listen, I had a really good look at it, and yeah, it's one of those ones it could have gone either way, but I also will say there was a Brumbies player actually on the ground who played at Sevi Reece's arm. So you could arguably say that was pretty cynical as well, if you wanted to take that down to another path. Now, even if they brought that back for a knock-on, I think it was under advantage. So the chances are they could have kicked to the corner anyway. And I do believe the Brumbies had the opportunity to do something when basically the Crusaders failed to take the kick-off. I think it was a good opportunity to keep driving it towards the post and pop pop over the drop kick. So for me, I don't think you could look at a game like this and come down to one moment, Paul. I think the Brumbies probably at the end of the day will probably lament the start that they made. They just let the Crusaders get off to such a good start.
Yeah, no, exactly. A slow start. We look for the Crusaders. Let's look. Last year, one of their big problems was injuries, particularly at number 10, right? And so when Kemmerer, who had been playing well for them, had been running the ship well, got injured. I think a lot of us thinking, "Oh no, here we go again for the Crusaders." But the timing of Rubens very hard coming back from injury has been fantastic for them, and he really has settling well there. Not being switched around with Kamara, actually saying, right, here's the jersey, you've got game time. I think it's probably helped with that. Look, I mean, he's 24 now. He's been around a bit. He's played at Waikato he played at Waikato for a couple of years before moving up to Northland, where he's been now for 3 years up there. So he's had 5 years of NPC rugby in him. And from memory, didn't they win the championship with Waikato with him at 10? He had a couple of seasons at the Chiefs, but never really got game time. He's gone down to the Crusaders last year when he got himself injured. So let's just hope he stays injury free for a bit, because this could be a run of games just with him being not injured. Could really see him blossom into being quite something special in that 10 jersey down there. But yeah, you say removing David Havili, or not having David Havili in the team, meaning he had to run things. I was listening to a podcast earlier, and one of the things they were talking about was the Crusaders tend to shift it too quickly to Havili, right? Going wide too early has been one of their problems. And yeah, as you say, perhaps by not having him there, that has actually made them let's play through them. Let's earn the right to go wide before doing it. And
what I liked about Rivers, even though the Brumbies use the outside in rush defence, Ray Hunter made the decision on at least 3 or 4 occasions to actually carry himself. And I know one of those carries he did to devastating effect, and that resulted in basically a few phase later that tried to George Bell in the corner. So no, listen, great to see. From what I believe, though, he's not contracted at this stage. He only had a 2-year deal with Crusaders, but I would imagine, Paul, Crusaders will probably be looking at that at the moment, thinking, gee, you know what, he's running the ship. He's running the ship pretty well, and you've got Kimbrough there who started the season very well, and boy, nothing like a bit of competition in a squad, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think both there will be good, because as we've seen this season, injuries also. You need more than one decent 10, or one decent player in every single position, really, for that matter. So that's seen the Crusaders finish on 3 wins on the bounce, whereas the Brumbies had 3 wins coming into this one, and then had this loss before. They'd already got themselves the top 3 place, so they're going to have a home for the final. So not the end of the world for them by any stretch of the imagination.
I was going to say, Paul, they're not in the most stunning form. You've got to say, if you think back, they obviously came off a bye a week ago before they played the Highlanders, and they pretty much scratched out a win in it. You could arguably say they were lucky in that game, and probably maybe even a tad lucky in this game. But for the most part, I actually thought they were the better team. But going to quarterfinals, and they've got that home quarterfinal coming up next week, they will have to find another gear.
Yes, that's going to be definitely a difficult one for them there. So that ended up that was the end of the Friday action, and then we headed over into Saturday. Now the Blues, who this season lost 5 of their first 6 games, and at that point, I had them well and truly buried. To be honest with you, they managed to go 2 wins, 2 losses, 2 wins, and then that loss to Moana Pacifica looks like being a key one for them, making it really tough for them coming into this one up against the Waratahs. Now, the Waratahs, look, they had a fantastic start of the season, winning their first 3 games and winning 4 of their first 5 games, but they'd only won 1 game since round 9, having lost 4 out of their, having lost 4 out of the previous 5 games. For them, they were not coming into this one with good form, and that win was against the Force as well, who, let's be honest, hadn't been travelling that well. Heading into this one up against the Tars, the Blues coming in with form, and the Tars weren't, and you kind of saw that. Early on, it was pretty even. You got Mark Talia and Rico Arnie both getting themselves tries, but Bowden Barrett missing the panels, missing the conversions, giving themselves allowing the Waratahs to, with penalties, to keep it to 10-6, heading towards half time. And then 2 more tries by the outside backs, Rico Arnie and Mark Talia, again, and suddenly, with just 3 minutes left of the half, it changed from being 10-6 to 24-6, and the Blues well and truly in control of the scoreboard. But it really did flip pretty quickly. The second half, then, it was just all Blues there, and they ran the game out to 46 to 6, not allowing the Waratahs to score in that second half, totally dominating it, and got themselves getting themselves into the playoffs with this. Actually, no, I think we actually had one more game that would matter, putting themselves in a position to be in the playoffs, finishing the season kind of with a win, and after round 6, where they had 5 losses and just 1 win, I'd written them off. But boy, oh boy, real comeback by the Blues in this one. I'm looking at their tries. Only 1 try by Riccatelli was by the forwards. And for a team that we've lamented for all their attack going bashing through the middle, to actually use their backs to get tries, well done at last. It takes a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, it actually took them a while to find their mojo, Paul, because after 25 minutes, they were really only up 5-3, and they'd been scratchy up. You could see them; they were trying things, but at times the timing was a little bit out. It was just marred with a few handling errors as well. And credit to the Waratahs, getting a few turnovers during that breakdown. But boy, the real key was just those 2 tries before halftime, both bang bang, well constructed too, with nice little kicks. AJ Lamb, who I thought was one of the better players for the Blues on the weekend. Great to see him straight away with the defence rushing, just drop a kick ahead. Rico Ioane winning the race to the touchdown, and of course the Waratahs not covering up another kick through later in the game. So they could have actually gone in at 10-6, but for all intents and purposes, Paul, the Waratahs just got no go forward. Even one of their better ball carriers, Gleeson, who we know is a very, very good player, was constantly met on the advantage line. I think if you look at the stats, there's a whole lot of carries that he made, but they were pretty ineffective at the end of the day. And once the Blues found their mojo and the confidence up, this game was as good as gone at half time, and it was just a case of how many the Blues would win by.
Yeah, look, it's one of these ones where you look at the scoreline and go, wow, the stats must have been absolutely lopsided, massive on the Blues side. Look, 7 tries to 0, but meters gained 397 to 326, carries 108 to 116. They didn't dominate possession. They didn't dominate from that point of view. On defence as well, 146 tries to 126 tries. Actually, the Blues had to make more tackles than the Waratahs. Normally, when you see that sort of scoreline, one side has had the ball for about 3/4 of the game, but not in this one. So yeah, the Blues, once they got going, were clinical. The Waratahs, lots of carrying, but not actually looking like actually getting those tries or actually caught scoring. But enough ball that Dr. Wright says. Apparently, the coaches of Waratahs have said they didn't spend enough time on attack. It showed. Enough attack, just not enough cutting attack.
Yeah, I think, Paul, that they had the luxury of having Joseph Suali. I think it just gives them another dimension in the back line. I also thought they were missing Foketi, who's their centre as well. But on the night, apart from a couple of half decent performance from Sinclair, the skipper, I thought he was pretty tidy. I thought Angus Bell tried hard up front, and Riley on the wing probably looked their best attacker in this game. But once again, I don't think they offered a heck of a lot on the night. I actually managed to get along to this game. Was a guest of the Auckland Rugby Union in their box in the top of the North Stand there. I might have sent you a picture there, Paul, somewhere. And I've got to say that was it was a great night out. Managed to get to the Barbarians Club as well. Had a good catch up with John R4. He looks like he probably should still be playing. Paul looks pretty much in amazing shape. Here I am there up on the bleachers at the end of the game, and actually great to see. Eden Park let people onto the field as well, so to mingle with the players. So that was also great to see. Also good to see the Blues players were wearing their club socks as well. What I would say though, I wish some of these players would pull them up, because if you are representing your team, jeepers, pull your socks up, guys. Listen, great concept, but we often watch the Barbarians games from Britain, and it's always great to see a lot of the players wearing their club socks. I see Bowden Barrett was wearing his Taranaki Coastal socks, so absolutely, good.
I think he's played for them in like 12 years.
Still his club. He probably started there, so hey.
Oh yes, absolutely. So. Next up, we had the Hurricanes versus Moana Pacifica, two of the teams fighting it out for finals footy and those playoff places. Coming into this one, look, the Moana come off the back of beating the Blues and then getting absolutely trounced by the Chiefs. Unfortunately, we saw something similar happen earlier in the season where they beat the Hurricanes and then lost big to the Blues the following week. Prior to that loss, the Chiefs put together 3 wins on the bounce to put themselves in this position. The Hurricanes, though, they were coming off the back of a draw and then 4 wins on the bounce, so 5 games without a loss. Which, when you compare that to their first 8 games, where they had 3 wins and 5 losses, and then their last sort of 6 games. With 5 wins and a draw, the Hurricanes definitely finishing with a wet sail this season. Ruben Love coming back has been a real key part of that for them, and obviously moving him up into number 10. But in this one, so yes, the Moana got the opening try, but then it was all one-way traffic for the Hurricanes. Devry, Flanders, Roygaard, Amanga Jensen, all getting tries in that first half for suddenly for it to blow out to a 28-7 lead. And you've got to say, look, at that point, the game was pretty much done. After the half, Amanga Jensen got himself another one. Pole, unfortunately, got a yellow card for Moana, which didn't help. Which straight afterwards, Tuipulotu. Tupu got a try, and it was 42 to 7 points. Ari Surveyor got himself got a consolation try middle there, but another 4 tries to Rackety Stones, Proctor, Inari, and Clark. there blew it out to 64-12. And when you think that Brett Cameron missed one conversion, Ruben Love missed another two, it could have been 70 points for the Hurricanes. So a tough final game for the Moana Pacifica in what has been their best season by a long shot so far, with 6 wins this season. So they finished on 6 wins and 8 losses, and just 1 place off the playoffs, just missing out on bonus points for the Blues by 4 points. So it's a whole win there, but even so, a sad way for Moana Pacifica to end. But they still need to look back and look at the good things they've done this season.
Oh, 100%, Paul. Listen, way more competitive. What did they have? Six wins this season. There were a couple of other games that got away with them. I think it just comes down to depth of squad. At the end of the day, I don't think you can keep rolling out the same players week in, week out. I think they've finally now found a home ground in North Harbour Stadium, and also a supporter base that can get behind them as well. And they're showing that they have travelling supporters no matter where they are around the country as well. I think just probably a bridge too far at the end of the day. Once again, Ardie Savea, boy, just ran himself to a standstill. The only real upside I can say from an All Black point of view is Ardie gets to rest for about a month. But Paul, because I just think he's probably going to be needing it. He's absolutely outstanding. Other players that have played well for them, of course, Patrick Pereglini, Miracle Whailangi, the likes of Kieran Tamoi Palau as well. Will he be with the Moana Pacifica next year? Because there's word that he's heading to the Chiefs. Basically, like for like swap with Sean Stevenson. That would be a real bugger for Moana if they were to lose.
That can't happen because Sean Stevenson's going to Japan.
He's going to Japan.
Yeah.
Well, that probably means he won't be available for Super Rugby next year, given that the Japanese season.
My understanding is he's managed to get himself out of his contract at the final year of his contract. Now, maybe the idea was he was swapped to Moana as kind of his final year, but I think he's actually managed to get himself out of the final year of his contract from that point of view. So no, he's going up to Kubota Spears.
Yeah,
in that one.
No, I think the fact that he's moving on probably tells you where he sits in All Black pecking order, which is a shame. That'll be a huge loss for not just the Chiefs, but also North Harbour as well. Boy, he'd been a big part of that North Harbour team throughout his career. But just heading back to Moana Pacifica, a couple of other players, Tupo Taialoa, the number 8 as well. He's been pretty impressive this year, Paul. If you think about it, he only really came in on a wider training contract to Moana Pacifica, and hey, being a Southland boy, will the Highlanders be sniffing around nocturnal rights? If you're listening, mate, what's the goss from down that way? Because he'd be a heck of a pickup, because I actually thought the Highlanders this year, I just thought struggled for a little bit of go forward from that number eight position. But all in all, good season, but probably be a tad disappointed with the way that they've finished the season. So their recruiting is going to be very, very important. I'm not 100% sure what the status of Ardie Savea is next year, Paul, whether he's got a sabbatical next year.
Well, no, because he had his sabbatical last year, right? So I think I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a sabbatical next year. So he'll be around. And look, I think actually having this team around, if they can just not have too many changes, I think they can grow really nicely off this. Maybe add a few more. add a few more there for that one. So apparently, Talielo was actually a product of the Otago area, not so much for his club rugby, and then got swooped by the Southland because Otago missed out on him. So he's had to move around to get his opportunities, but look, it just shows dedication there that he is willing to move to try and get those opportunities, and it's paid off well for him this year. As you say, unexpected, but hey, fantastic to see that he's got these grasped it with both hands. Look, from a Hurricanes point of view, because we've been obviously talking about the Moana quite a lot. Amaya Jensen was second top with 94 points in this one, and Billy Proctor with 57. So the midfield certainly racked up the points, the fancy points in this one. And there's been a lot of talk of their Lucies and the opportunities of potentially Karifi coming into that 7 jersey for the All Blacks, or at least getting into the All Blacks squad. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, and they'll be looking at wanting to have a long run in these finals to give those players, or for those players to show themselves to the All Blacks head coaches really in that one. So I think we can probably see quite a few players from this squad. One of the issues is going to be around Ruben Love. Is what is he? Is he a fullback or is he a 10? Does he end up with the same sort of curse that Beauden Barrett had early in his career, where you weren't quite sure is he a 10 or a 15? But maybe that means he fits exactly into the mold that the All Blacks are looking for in that sort of playmaker role, where he can fit into both of them in a similar way that both Beauden Barrett and David McKenzie can. Maybe that means he fits right into that mold, unlike Sean Stevenson from that point of view. So it'll be interesting to see how many of these guys get picked up from that. But by getting themselves third place in the table with that win, fourth place in the table with that win, that means they go into the quarterfinals with very little to lose. Okay, if they win, they're into the semi-finals. If they lose, the chances are the Chiefs and Crusaders will both have won. In which case, they'll go in as highest seeded loser into the semi-finals. So they really have a shot at nothing here. Because there's a good chance that they'll be making it into the semi-finals, whether they win or they lose, with this funny new system. So getting that big win, securing themselves that fourth place before the Queensland Reds got to play, was a really important result for them.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Paul, it was a great contest between Ari and Ari Savia and Duplessis Krufi. In this particular game, both almost cut from the same cloth when it comes to sort of breakdown and how good they are on both sides of the ball. I enjoyed that part of the contest. I also think they're fortunate they got a little bit of depth as well. Like, I thought it was a blow losing both Riley Higgins and Kinina Holo as well, but they've showed that they've actually got depth to cover that. And Peter Umanga Jensen, probably his best ever game at Super Rugby level, and obviously reflected in his fantasy points as well, Paul. They are definitely a team that's on form, and I think they look a lot better with Brett Cameron at first five. No disrespect to, they used Riley Hohepa earlier in the year, but I think Cameron's the former All Black is a guy who's been around for a while. We know he was part of a Crusaders team that won two or three titles, so he'll know what the expectation is going into quarterfinal footy.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously he's coming back from injury, and that's why he wasn't available for that first part of the season. And there were lots of question marks as to what would the Hurricanes do. But him coming back now, and Ruben Love coming back earlier, really has gives some options there at 10 now, which is good to see. Before we forget, Paul, massive congratulations to Tyrell Lomax's 100 Super Rugby games. Oh, that's a good milestone to bring up. Finally, then we had the Reds versus the Drua, and the Drua didn't help themselves before any points were on the board. got themselves a yellow card, and when he came back from that yellow card, it's 14-0, and that balloons out to 33-0 by half time. Game over, really, for the Drua. In what has been a really disappointing season for them. Well, let's be honest. On the road here, I think it's what we're expecting. The Drua did get themselves a try early in the second half, only to then go and get a second yellow card, and drawing only conceding one try actually while he was off. But look, again, it was all the Reds after that, and 52-7 was the end score in this one. The meaning that the Reds have managed to put themselves a win there, because look, they started the season a bit like the Waratahs, really strong with 5 wins and a loss in their first 6 games. But since then, they had 5 losses and 2 wins to 5 losses. So getting this extra win here in the last game, head before finals time, I think is really important for the Reds to give them some momentum and some belief back after what's been a really, really tough second half of the season for them. And still, look, they finished 5th in the table. We're running a bit long here, but anything particularly from this game? What we watched was let's be honest, a pretty predictable result.
I must admit, Paul, I got in at when the game was at half time, and I saw the score, and I thought, gee, this is as good as over.
Yep.
Simple as that. And I think the harder they tried, the more mistakes they made. I don't know what it is, but it just seems like every game I see out of Brisbane these days, there seems to be raining. It seems to follow the Reds around. The conditions over there. What happened to the Sunshine State? That's all I want to know. It seems to have seems to have disappeared. But yeah, they'll look at the season. I suspect there's been a lot going on in the back office. Paul, there's been a lot of talk about players that have already signed overseas contracts. A little bit of disharmony in terms of how they've been wanting to play the game. So this has been certainly a tough gig for Glenn Jackson. This is his first year, isn't it, Paul? It's his
first year. And look, he isn't helped by. I mean, look, when they played the Brumbies, I think, away, where the coach didn't turn up to pick them up from the airport, and they all had to sit in the back of a truck and things like that, and that was brought up as highlighted as being a bit of a total joke as to how some of the players get treated off the pitch. Now, I don't know where to point the finger at. Is that at Super Rugby? Is that at the Fiji and Drua administration? I don't know where you point the finger, but look, that's the only one that came to light in the media. But you can bet your bottom dollar that there's been a whole bunch of other things in the background that haven't helped the players, and you can't blame them if they're being treated like that to go overseas and to sign other contracts where this is a shop window for them. Look, various players have come back, and clearly, yeah, this season under Glenn Jackson hasn't worked out. Whether that's Glenn Jackson's fault, whether that's the administration with Fiji and Drua, whether that's the administration with Super Rugby, I don't know where the problem is. I'm not close enough to understand that, but yeah, clearly it hasn't worked this season like it did work for the previous 2 seasons. Fortunately for those seasons, but unfortunately for this season.
Agreed.
So for a lot of this season, we've had four Australian teams in the top 6. In the end, though, it's flipped. We've got the Chiefs, Crusaders, Brumbies, Hurricanes, Reds, and Blues. So 4 New Zealand teams and 2 Australian teams, with the Waratahs and Force having both strong starts to the season, and then kind of slipped in the second half and fallen out of contention. So that means that the Chiefs will host the order of the games is the Crusaders will host the Reds on Friday night at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Then on Saturday we've got the Chiefs versus the Blues. A real short trip for the Blues down the State Highway 1, and then the Brumbies host the Hurricanes in that final game. The Crusaders Reds, having seen as I've sort of mentioned about the second half of that Red season, where the Crusaders, having only lost one game since round 8, or since round 7, sorry, round 8 they had a win. You've got to say that the Crusaders go into that one as heavy favourites at home against the Reds. The Chiefs versus the Blues. Oh boy, oh boy. Last year's champions have stuck themselves in, and they have an opportunity. I think Rico Ioane's being quoted in one of the papers as basically saying, "Guys, you shouldn't have given us a sniff, boys. You've let us in. We're here now." So whilst the Chiefs go into this one as heavy favourites, look, when it comes to playoff rugby and it's a one-off game, that one could go either way. But I say Chiefs heavy favourites, but boy oh boy, I wouldn't be surprised if there was an upset here. Remember, the Chiefs, because they are the top seed, they have that life belt, right? They've got the parachute. They can afford to lose a game, and they will be back again next week. Finally, the Brumbies against the Hurricanes. Look, the Brumbies lost at home last weekend to the Crusaders. So look, the Hurricanes know it can be done. They're finishing with the wet sail, as I said before, having won their last 5 games on the bounce, and having only won 2 games before that. So clearly they're in good form heading to that one. So that one again should be a cracking game. At home, you'd give the Brumbies the edge, but as I say, that to me is a very close game as well. Now, will the Chiefs need that parachute? Or well, if they win, I think it's going to be one of either the Brumbies or the Hurricanes who are using that life belt to save themselves for the semi-finals.
Paul, I was going to say all 3 of these games actually could go either way. Seriously, they really could. I think back to that Chiefs Blues game that was played in round 5. My God, that was that's a while ago now, wasn't it? The Blues that night were missing Hoskins Tutu, Caleb Clark, and Bowden Barrett. So it was a good performance, and if you think about it, was probably a couple of centimeters of an upright that the Blues could have picked up that win. So they're more than capable. I see one thing that it might be concerning for the Chiefs is the attrition rate from that Highlanders game. Obviously, Quinta Pye took a heavy knock to the face. Seemed like he was okay, whether that comes under concussion protocol. But I did notice Wallace Satiti was limping a bit in that game as well. Now, if they're not available, that would be a huge loss. But boy, this is a Chiefs team. They go into this game rightful favourites. I think if it is a team that's going to win it, you'd probably go with the Chiefs. They'll probably have I'm expecting a packed house down at FMG Stadium on Saturday night. Of course, also on Saturday night, the third game. I'm working my way back, Paul. Brumbies v Hurricanes. I think the Brumbies will also have a big crowd. I think their crowd. I think they were booing 5 minutes after the game. I think they were still booing yesterday, Paul. A couple of days later, they weren't happy about the result. They will be very hard to beat over there. But I think the Hurricanes have actually got it in them. I am so looking forward to that Saturday night, and of course the Crusaders playing the Reds on Friday night. We know the Reds, the Crusaders are the favourites, but we also know the Reds are capable of putting on a good performance down in Christchurch like they did last year. Not so much this year. The Crusaders were pretty poor. You'd still expect the Crusaders to win, but boy, I think it's been a while since we've seen Super Rugby so close going into quarterfinals.
Look, that first game, I'm sorry, for my mind, I can only see it going one way, but the other 2 I can see going either way. So I think Saturday, definitely make sure you're in front of your telly for those. One final thing before we check out is the Super Rugby Pacific Team of the Year has been named. And now this is the opposition coaches or I think is and captains, give points, don't they, to the top 3 players on the other side. Now, we heard 2 rounds ago that Arnie Surveyor was the Super Rugby Player of the Year, and he got 46 votes at the end there to top that competition. But the props both come out of Australia, with Alan Alatoa, who's had a fantastic season, is been in try-scoring form for the Brumbies, and Angus Bell for the Waratahs lead the way as a top 2 props in the competition. Hooker, I think, will be a big surprise. It is for me anyway. Tavita Ikanivere from Fiji and Drua got 19 votes. That's the most votes for a prop for a hooker. Now, I guess from a certain point of view, if all the other players are playing badly and you're playing well, you're going to get the points, aren't you, each time from the opposition coach's votes. But still, well done when you got players like Riccatelli or Cody Taylor, etc., who've been doing pretty well this season. To see him come through is impressive. In the second row, then, Jeremy Williams and Patrick Tuapolotu. There, Jeremy Williams from the Western Force and Patrick Tuapolotu for the Blues. Again, look, the Forces locks were doing a fantastic job disrupting lineouts and stuff. They were doing great. In the back row, Arnie Surveyor, Tom Hooper from the Brumbies. Look, he was leading. He was doing was one of the top scorers in the early few rounds, and then it's shared between Carlo Tizzano and Fraser McWright, both on 29 points. They couldn't split those 2, but I think Tizzano has had a cracking season with the Force. Injury towards the end, I think he's missed a few games, unfortunately. But boy, oh boy, he's saved it a few times. Anyone you think that deserving in that?
I suppose the other one that I think is probably a tad unlucky in the locks. I know Jeremy Williams gets the vote, but gee, I thought Darcy Swain was absolutely outstanding in the Western Force this year. I think he might have been close to the top line-out taker in the actual competition, not just on his own ball, but on other teams' ball. He just interrupted so much ball. I thought Fabian Holland had a pretty useful season, but listen, there's no. I've got no qualms with what we're seeing. Joseph Suali in the team, but boy, when he was on the field, he looked class. And if you think about the fullbacks,
I'll just run through the backs now, so we can. I've done the pack. In the backs, you've got Cam Roygaard at scrum half, David McKenzie at fly half. Well, considering he missed quite a few games through injury, I'm a bit surprised by that one, just because of the games he missed. In the centres, Tavita Nawai and AJ Lamb of the Highlanders and Blues. What I think is testament for AJ Lamb, who has transformed. Actually, both these players until this season, you would say were wingers, and suddenly the two top votes for midfielders are ex-wingers, which is interesting. On the wing, Harry Potter for the Western Force and Kini Naholo. Kini Naholo, fantastic start to the season, but I think it's faded in the second half, to be honest with you. And then, as you say, Joseph Sualihi at fullback there with 20 votes. But I guess Toto and Arwai being in there, I think you mentioned earlier about how he's been one of the key players for the Highlanders. Sorry, it's not surprised that he's got big votes in that one.
No problem. I pretty much agree with everything you're saying. And before I completely go off the edge, it might be almost our cue to wrap the show up. But listen, fantastic. It's just a shame we never got to discuss the performance or something. Just quickly on the Highlanders, I know they finished bottom of the table, but they'll look back at their season, a lot of missed opportunities. But I still think there may be one of those sides that are probably just a shy of 2 or 3 key players, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, look, they had 7 losing bonus points out of their 11 losses, right, which shows that they were close in a lot of those games. Out of the bottom 5 teams, they've got minus 90, which means they've got the smallest negative points difference out of them. So yeah, it's been a tough season for the Highlanders there, as Stephen says, but close, but not quite working. So hopefully, I would looking towards next season, and with them only losing 2 players, apparently in the live chat, someone said they're going to be a real force next year. Because if you turn those seven close losses into 7 wins, even if you don't get try bonus points, that's an extra 21 points, and suddenly that puts you up into 4th place in the table. Now, look, clearly not winning all their games, but even so, it shows you how they could very easily have climbed very quickly up that table if they turned around some of those close results. Do we have time for fantasy, or is it time to, or we need to? I think it's probably time to wrap up with your technical issues.
No, listen, I don't think it's worth talking about. I kind of fell off the rails over the last few weeks. Was travelling along quite well. I know I had a goodish sort of last round, but pretty much fell away between rounds 11 and 15 or 14, should I say?
Yeah, so I fall away. You came 6th this round, which was pretty good. I was way down. You've climbed above me though. You're 13th and I'm 14th overall. Cornflake, well, yes, I think he is in his trip over to the USA. I think he may have been distracted by sort of worldwide wrestling and all sorts of other stuff going on over there. So he's slumped back down to 25th in the table. So yeah, I think we'll wrap up fantasy and forget that even really happened until next season. But, so yes, so Stephen, 3 more rounds of playoff rugby, and then we're into basically All Blacks and all of that kind of action. Plus, also don't forget the British and Irish Lions in Australia as well. So we'll obviously have all of that. So look, we might be wrapping up the end of the Super Rugby season, but that does not mean that we're wrapping up the end of the show for the year by any stretch of the imagination, folks. Do join me next week after our first round of finals action. As I say, for me, Stephen reckons there's 3 games there in the balance. Personally, I think there's just 2, but either way, some cracking rugby coming up.